wrestling are aware, franchise players, they started off 2024 a literal wheelbarrow full of titles. There was so many belts, they couldn't carry them around. They had the ACW six-man tag team titles, the ACW tag team titles, the ACW Bluegrass tag titles, and Chris Cannon was the ACW International Champion. Now, the only champion in the franchise players is handsome Nick Hamrick, who defeated Marino Tenaglia at the Winner Takes All event in Oak Hill, West Virginia in December. So, lots of changes in the world of the franchise players in the last year.
And they weren't changes for the better, that's for sure. And we noticed Chris Cannon came out not dressed in any gear. He's in casual clothes, and he's been out with an injury.
He's been out for an injury. Talking to Chris before the show, he's rehabbing that ankle, looking to come back soon. And one thing about Chris Cannon, he has been extremely loyal to Shane Douglas and the franchise players, which is, considering the wars that they fought against each other, let's not forget that Shane Douglas defeated Chris Cannon for the ACW heavyweight title back in 2020. But sometimes, you go to war, you go to fight somebody, you gain respect for that person. And Shane Douglas and Chris Cannon, a mutual respect. And as we've heard in some of these interviews with Nick Hamrick maybe not sharing the same amount of respect for the legacy of Shane Douglas and the franchise players.
It has seemed like Nick Cannon was more hitching on to the coat for the ride up versus being a partner at his side.
Yes, agreed. It almost seems like Nick Hamrick, maybe a fair weather friend.
Right.
And you can see sometimes when someone's true colors shine through, and it's been very interesting seeing where the franchise players were a year ago versus where they are today.
No belts, but Dick Vickers has some hair. That's you win some, you lose some.
Well, I'll tell you who does have some belts now, making their first defense of the undisputed unified ACW tag team titles here in the compound today.
Suplex Country coming in hot.
Coming in hot. Corey Sparks and Cowpoke Paul. They won that tag team shake-up tournament and cashed that in for a shot at the titles. They unified the ACW and the Bluegrass tag titles in Oak Hill Winner Takes All. And what a ride for this new tag team. They have just ripped through the competition in Appalachian Championship Wrestling, and it's going to be real interesting today as we have the franchise players, the former champs, going up against Cowpoke and Corey in their first defense. Okay, Corey, he's seeing some stars right now. And one thing about Nick Hamrick, there is no denying his skill. There's no denying his talent. But he's a pretty shady individual, as is Dick Vickers, as is Betty D. As we're seeing right now, as referee Jim Lawrence is getting distracted by Shane Douglas and Nick Hamrick taking advantage of the situation. Big elbow from Shane. Shane taking out Cowpoke too. And then taking him over, cutting that ring in half, taking Corey over to their corner, as far away from Cowpoke Paul as possible to prevent that hot tag.
Maybe Shane Douglas capitalizing on Corey Sparks' youth there for a minute, but didn't take long for him to rally back.
And all the friction of the franchise players, we've talked about this before as they were going through this like monumental losing streak last year in Appalachian Championship Wrestling. One big win can just turn that whole thing around. We've seen that happen with sports franchises. We've seen that happen with athletes in professional wrestling and other combat sports. But if the franchise players could defeat Cowpoke and Corey today for those unified tag straps, they're back on top of the world.
And since you brought that sports analogy in there, it's like you have to wonder if, they had their final embarrassment, I guess you could say, in December. And then they've had a few months off, sort of like their halftime, to get together, regroup, figure out how they're going to bring this thing back. And, their success today could depend on how those conversations went.
Good analogy with the halftime thing, Nikki, because, who can forget when the New England Patriots were down? I forget, it was like 20-some points in the halftime of that Super Bowl against the Falcons, and they hung in there and ended up defeating the Falcons for the Super Bowl, but that's because they didn't give up. And one thing about Shane Douglas and the rest of the franchise players, super competitive athletes, and I can't see any of these guys ever giving up. Oh, Cowpoke with the hot tag, taking out Shane, taking out Nick. He's cleaning house here, Nikki. And you got Cowpoke. I think he's going to set him up for that signature. Oh, he's going for that DDT. But Nick, he blocked it. And a big drop kick right to the mush of Cowpoke Paul. This thing's heating up, Nikki.
Yeah, while the franchise players might have been talking about how to come back, Corey Sparks and Cowpoke Paul were also talking about how to stay on top.
Corey and Cowpoke just tore through that tag shake-up series. Absolutely in that scramble and no-kill against top athletes. They showed where they are in the hierarchy of the ACW tag division, at the very top. But that could change today's compound, Nikki. And the fans are letting the franchise players have it. They're during this losing streak, nobody was happier about it than the fans of Appalachian Championship Wrestling,
who have been heckled and mocked by the franchise players
every step of the way.
They're ready to see them get
Wait! Whoa! Big sunset flip! We got